Hello, everyone. Good morning or good afternoon, depending on where you are. Thank you very much for attending our session, and thank you, Catherine, for getting us started. Really appreciate it. Good job. This is our seventh summit. They're getting better every time we have one because the audience has a thirst and interest to know what's going on and how we can use the knowledge from the experts that we've collected to make better decisions in our businesses. So I thank you for the opportunity. We've got a great panel today. Our panel is making the dots, setting up for tomorrow. We're going to do managing the dots when we put the dots to work. Of course, the dots are the ecosystem of the auto industry, the commercial vehicle industry right now, and how we connect all of the elements of that ecosystem to better serve our customers. And I want to give you a little historical perspective on this. All the time when we're going through this transition right now with our transformation of mobility, we believe that we're pioneers and we're doing it for the first time. Well, I got news for you. We're not. But I want to give you an example of how historically things repeat. And if you want to know what we mean by the dots, connecting the dots, managing them, or making them, I'll go back to 1920 when Michelin Tire Company was trying to encourage people how to use their car more, because before that they were riding horses and everybody's life was within a 20 minutes of their home. And now that they were buying cars mainly as luxury cars, as status symbols, they wanted to make sure that people use those cars and, well, use the tires up, so they'd have to buy more tires. So in 1925, the Michelin Tire Company created the Michelin Restaurant Guide to tell people where the restaurants are that they should go to based on the food, the quality, and how they ranked it. And that caused people to have a reason to use their car. They use tires. And so that's what we're doing here. Of course, the ecosystem has gotten a little more complicated since the 1920s, when it was a car, drugstore selling gasoline or alcohol or whatever it ran on, and a few places where you went. The ecosystem now has become a lot more complicated, but it's all full of opportunities for all of the businesses that are out there. And we really appreciate the audience. Thank you for joining Work Truck Solutions. And this is an opportunity for us to answer your questions. We want to make sure that if you have any suggestions or thoughts, put them in the comments and we're going to respond to them. So this is making the dots. And that means that in connecting the dots, we've got to have those that are producing the dots so we can connect them and make them work for the customers. We've got a panel of veterans here, the best panel you could ever have of experts that will share with you their information, their knowledge, and allow you to be more strategic. Shaun Skinner is one of our panelists. He's the president, executive officer of Isuzu North America. Shaun, he's the first local executive, non-Japanese executive, running a division for Isuzu. And he passed the test of time. I think Shaun, you've been there about 36 years.
That's right. That's right.
Yeah. That's what it takes. And I think the company is only 37 years old. So you're one of the founders. And that's a lot about you. And it also says a lot about the system Japan uses. But it doesn't mean that you get tired in your job being there a while. Last year was Isuzu's best year in the history of the company. They were up 42% in deliveries, over 31,000. So it shows that it's an honor to have you, Shaun, and to be here. And I'm going to introduce these companies in the order, again, to show you the test of time. Isuzu was founded in 1916. And in the companies that we've got represented here, it's actually the newest company we have. Our second panelist is Kirk Mann. Kurt is the Senior Vice President, General Manager, Mitsubishi HC Capital. The market leader in consumer lending, commercial, asset finance, vehicle leasing. This is a stalwart company that really does focus in commercial. And Kurt has a great background because he goes all the way back to the GE days when he was teaching Welch how to make sure that you're making money lending funds for commercial purposes. And one of the cooks during that time when really a lot of our current business practices were born. Now Mitsubishi is an older company. It goes back to 1885. So I guess they've passed the test of time. Kurt, thank you for joining us. But the winner of the oldest company is Mandar Dighe. Mandar is the sales and marketing business development executive for Knapheide. That's North America's most popular manufacturer of work truck bodies and truck beds. They've got 240 distributors. They're known worldwide, and they were founded in 1848 when they started producing wagons. So as you can see, we've got a really great panel here with a lot of historical knowledge, but more importantly, I think that when it comes to making dots, they know the business. So I'd like to get started now with our panel and sort of talk a little bit about the dots coming in the future and how our panelists see what we'll be producing and what we'll be putting together in the ecosystem. And I think I'm going to start with the elephant in the room, and that's going to be with all of you, but starting with Shaun, if you could respond. Yesterday, the U.S. Court of Appeals held California's right to set different emission regulations than the rest of the country. So in 2035, all passenger cars and passenger trucks have to be zero emissions in California. And for commercial vehicles from 2B to 8, in 2035, I think 55% of 2B to 3 have to be zero, and 75% of class 4 and 8. That's not that far away when it comes to engineering, design, and developing products. So that challenge, and the fact that, as Catherine mentioned in the session before, there's this gap between the regulations and the customers' appetites. So Shaun, what are you doing? How are you coping with this transformation in terms of your product development to sell what you have today, but pay for what you have to develop for tomorrow?
Getting back on, looks like you might have had some technical difficulties. I'll go ahead. Is he coming back? All right. Yeah. So, look, you're absolutely right, Jim. We're seeing a little bit of hesitation in the market, and yes, California's regulations are pretty stringent. And from a timing standpoint, for a lot of people, it's a little fast. But you'll see where OEMs, lenders are focused on meeting the needs of what is to come. And I think Mandar maybe has it easier than anybody, and that is he just manufactures the body, and there's not a lot of change there. But we're certainly focused from a lending perspective on making products available to people who need to make this transition. And that includes the truck, it includes the charging infrastructure, it includes everything around that vehicle that our customer and the OEM's customer needs in order to move forward. It's been the conversation we've been having for the last 5 or 6 years, Jim, and lenders are coming along. Probably 6 years ago, I certainly didn't see as many offerings in the marketplace as we see today. So I think we're going to be ready for it from a lending perspective, but those appetites for the clean technologies, have waned a little bit, and we'll see what prevails here over the next. Well, I think California is going to prevail, but we'll see how quickly people can actually make the transition.
No, that's great.
I totally agree with what Kurt's saying, that the demand and I would say the velocity towards that over the last probably 12 to 18 months has kind of softened a little bit, but it's still there. I mean, I think if anybody thinks that we're not going to see the alternative technologies moving towards the zero emissions vehicles and doesn't think that's going to happen, I think that's somewhat fool's gold. That I think it's going to get there. I've said previously on our panel discussions that for us, it's pretty simple. From a body itself, it's okay. What's the chassis? How are you driving it? And then we build a body that fits the chassis. From that standpoint, it is somewhat easier, that, as Kurt said. But on the next level of that, our company, Knapheide is also one of the largest upfitters in the country. So we take our bodies, and then we also integrate partner components and subsystems and things like that. And you do get into some challenges, right? I mean, if you're thinking about, lift gates and hoists and cranes, and, okay, now you're running electric over hydraulic PTO systems and all kinds of stuff, and you've got voltage challenges, and, that's just on the electric side. When we start thinking about other technologies, what's going to happen? That's all stuff that we've got to stay vitally aware of, because at the end of the day, it's a truck. It's a truck, it's a chassis, it's a chassis, it's a body, all the other equipment that goes with it. And then the acquisition side, which Kirk is very intimate with and understands significantly. That whole package is the dot, right? So if you have a change in what the propulsion technology is, it does affect all of us to some extent downstream, some more than others, but at the end of the day, we've all got to figure out how we work together to make it work. And it's definitely something that we're watching and trying to get our hands around going forward.
Mandar, do you see any evidence of downsizing for weight saving? Because the payload is affected by the range in terms of the battery capacity.
Well, what we're seeing more is okay. Especially with some of our customers in California, here's the vehicle that we're looking at. It's electric, or it's something alternative, and we need to accomplish the same amount of work that we were doing with our previous vehicle now with this new vehicle, right? So when you're talking about payload, it's more along the lines of, okay, what can I do to carry the same payload? And then we start getting creative in terms of, okay, what type of materials are we looking at for the body? Does it have to be aluminum versus steel? If you go steel, can it handle the load that you're going to see in terms of, and not what I mean by payload load, but, structural load, things like that. Where do we need to optimize things to move forward? Then it's like, oh, we may add more batteries, or we may do this. Okay, well, then we got to have some flexibility on what that means over the life of the truck and all that kind of thing. So, in terms of like pure downsizing, maybe not as much. You might see some more people moving towards, moving into maybe like a light duty pickup that gives them an alternative power source rather than a larger pickup. But for the most part, it's still, we're still seeing the need for, work. The work isn't necessarily changing as fast as some of the propulsion technologies, right? So, we're still moving around concrete saws. We're still taking an electrician to a house, and he's got panels and batteries and other things he's got to put into the house. And, that stuff still stays the same. So the physical constraints of size may not be changing, but the challenges of capacity and what you can do to maintain that capacity, that's part of the Rubik's Cube that we're trying to figure out as we connect and build the dots here.
Yeah. So I think, Shaun, have you rejoined us?
I have. Good thing
so.
our trucks work better than the Wi-Fi does here at the office, Jim.
Well,
I thought you were going to throw an eclipse statement in there or something.
I know. I'm not going to do that. I don't know what happened. It was like, and if it severs again, then we've got an issue going on here. But yeah. So I don't know what went on.
I thought you had a hot prospect. You had a hot deal.
You know what? I would have at least waited till we were finished with that.
I don't know where we lost you, but
Right,
we
right
were
at the
talking about
beginning. Right at the beginning.
okay, the first challenge is really relates to the fact that yesterday the Court of Appeals upheld California's right to demand zero emission vehicles in 2035 for light cars and trucks,
Yes.
but up to 45 or 75% based on the size of the truck in California in 2035 for class 2B to 8, or I think 4 to 8. And so what we're talking about is building the dots. And then at the same time, the customer is in. Uh-oh, did we lose him again? Shaun?
Oh, no, I think
Christine, is
No,
Shaun
he's there.
still there? Oh, there you are.
I'm still here.
So, the customers have shown a little more reticence because the actual electric vehicle doesn't really serve all purposes and all needs
Right.
for every customer nationwide. But you're now under these regulations to produce these zero emission vehicles.
Right.
So how are you managing that? What are you going to build, and how do you pay for the development of the EVs or zero emission vehicles, selling what you have? What do you see the short-term transitions going to be for products in commercial truck?
Yeah, and not to build a clock, and I appreciate kind of the run-in on that, Jim, is that, from our standpoint, really the first gate that we have to look at is what do things look like as we look well into the future? And the drill. You've got to look out well past, probably 10, 15 years. You've got to kind of understand how you're going to lay everything in from a cadence perspective. We know that in the beginning phases, having the electric vehicle is not going to be of super high volume. But we have to invest in that. As an OEM, we've got to make sure that that's going to be a tool that our customers have. And there are some customers who are looking to really, I would say, decarbonize, reduce their carbon footprint. Usually they're well-capitalized, very large, consumer-oriented companies that, from a brand image standpoint, are going to need that. But also they believe that longer term, that'll be the lowest cost of mile that they're going to have in their trucks. But they're going to be kind of the innovators, the early adopters. And we know that we're not going to be able to sell a ton of those. As you're mentioning, though, at the same time, we've got to invest in the emission regulations that are from a low NOx standpoint, from low, greenhouse gases, and we've got to be prepared for that. So we've got to make the investment in those pieces, but to some degree, those are going to be the pieces that are going to help us to be able to provide the revenue needed to kind of support the electrification of the zero emission vehicles, whether it be battery electric, hydrogen fuel cell, hybrid, whatever that's going to end up being as we look down the road. How do we make sure that we have the necessary funds that are available to invest in that? And how are we sure that we can provide whatever it is that we believe our customers are going to need through their wants and needs or through regulatory issues? We've got to be prepared for that. So the hard part for us is it used to be pretty simple. As you remember, you build an engine, you put it in a frame, and you sell it, as long as everything kind of fits together. Now it's a complicated equation because of the fact you've got to meet these regulatory demands that are there from an emission standpoint, some of that being zero emission. And so your portfolio has to grow and the amount that you're spending in R&D has to be larger. But you've got to look at it with an eye on the future to be sure that you're going to meet those needs that everybody has, not only today, but what they're going to have in the future. So for us, those dots get kind of more spread out and the field gets larger and the path is less defined, and you've got to have more areas that you're investing in to be sure that you're ready to go. So it is a tougher equation for us. No question about it. The thing I feel great about from our standpoint is we're making that investment through partnerships, alliances. Those help. That helps to drive some of the costs down. So it used to be that if everybody wanted to try and do it on their own, now to try and do it on your own, impossible. So you see things happening with alliances and partnerships all over the place. We've got, a global and a North America in partnership with Cummins. We have an alliance with General Motors here in the U.S. using their gas engines in some of our products. So, we're utilizing that, in a global alliance with Volvo trucks. So there's all sorts of things that are going on that with us that are going to help us for the future. And I think something near and dear to your heart, a partnership with Toyota that's global. They now own a part of Isuzu. And so you're looking for ways that you can kind of find ways to find those synergies to help you to be prepared for the future. So not to go on and on, we could talk about forever, but you gotta be sure that you're ready from an OEM's perspective, because if we can't build it, then nothing else really moves forward. Mandar has to have a vehicle to put the body in, the body on. Kirk's got to have something that we're all selling to finance, and the customers out there have to have that in order for commerce to go on. So we've got to be sure that we're not just doing commercial when it's convenient. We've got to be ready that we're there for commercial when it's, because it's necessary, and that we have the necessary tools for everybody.
Very, very well said, I think, from Shaun's part. I think that partnership piece, especially on the powertrain side, I used to be a powertrain guy back in my youth, but the fact that the technology is changing so fast that collaboration is needed is just critical, and it's just a really interesting thing to watch, but also be part of.
Yeah, it's almost necessary. And Jim, you've been down this road. It's almost necessary when you look at how many avenues we can go down, even from a zero emission or low emission standpoint. Hydrogen fuel cell, battery electric, and let's talk about battery electric, solid state batteries. When we get to solid state batteries and we can drive an efficiency there, that is going to cut way down on charging times. It'll greatly increase the amount of range that you have. And additionally, because you'll be able to compress the energy into a smaller area, you're going to have more gross vehicle weight. You'll have more payload capacity. So we're kind of in the infancy of all that. So, I think as we move forward, we'll be better prepared for that. But boy, we're in the very early phases of all that. And I know that not every application is going to work with battery electric, at least in the initial phases, and it may never. So we've got to make sure that we keep those options open. But, it's not going to be easy. It's going to be challenging. And I think a lot of it's going to be driven by regulatory standards and to some degree, these early adopters and innovators that are probably going to require that we have those types of technologies for them. And let's even layer autonomy on that down the road too. Yeah. It's going to be something that we have to invest in today.
Jim, I'm probably going to go down a little bit of a rabbit hole here real quick. But, Shaun was talking about this industry and how it is necessary, and he's spot on. I was visiting with one of our big dealers this morning, and he said, we bring these younger folks into the business, and we try to explain to them, and the dedication, the commitment that's required, and what he focuses on with them in that conversation is COVID. During COVID, a lot of people shut down, but the one thing that didn't shut down were dealerships. They did not shut down, and they kept going because they had to serve the industry. And that's why when Shaun talks about necessary, that's a big deal. And that's the thing that ought to drive all of us to thinking about partnerships, even with people. I'll bring an 80s term back into the fold here, 2024. Remember the book Co-opetition? It was a book about working with your competitors as partners in spaces, and that's exactly what we need to do. And it's a paradigm shift for some people. Some organizations have the cultural belief that if we don't dominate the entire spectrum, then it's just we don't care, and that's not going to get us to ensuring an essential industry continues to operate the way we need it to operate in order to meet the needs of everyone. And so I just wanted to highlight those partnerships are important. Mandar spoke to it as well, I'm hopeful that, and we've been very fortunate to get some of those partnerships, but there's more that is needed in the market, no doubt about it.
Right. Mandar, do you see the collaboration in getting involved earlier in product development?
Yeah, I think that's going to be imperative. It's kind of a mixed bag, but depending on the OEM and the level of engagement they're looking for, we're starting to get pulled in much earlier in the chassis development, the chassis and the vehicle development side of the business than we used to. As Shaun said, as people are trying to figure out, as companies and entities are trying to figure out, okay, what do we need to do from a powertrain perspective and the propulsion, and it's not even powertrain, it's propulsion and energy and all that kind of stuff,
Mhm.
then, trying to make sure that the downstream partners or the downstream entities are ready, is changing, and we're getting pulled into a lot of discussions a lot earlier from a co-opetition perspective, right? With some of the
Mhm.
OEMs say, hey, here's what we're thinking. What do you think? And then, all of us getting in a room saying, oh, we think this or we think that.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm trying to say there is I don't think as an industry, we can afford to be surprised as things are rolling out anymore. Does that make sense? Like we can't have a new,
Yes,
Sean
you're right.
cannot afford to like introduce a new truck and then, show it off at NTEA and it be a surprise to all the major body manufacturers and or upfitters. I mean, it's got to be very synchronized. It's got to be very coordinated such that, for the speed to market, that thing's got to be ready to go. Right. And we all need to be ready to go and work on it. And, again, connecting the dots, that's not just from the hardware and the hard part, the hardware and the hard goods side of it. It's from the soft goods side of it with Kurt. Like, how are we financing it? What's going to be the residual? What's the disposal? How's this going to work? Um, so again, these major changes from a
Mhm.
philosophy and technology standpoint with vehicle architecture and propulsion is pretty cool, and it's going to be very interesting to see how we all work together to get there.
And that's true. And Kirk, this relates to the offspring. It isn't just the propulsion system, but this transition of technology is bringing different concepts of ownership, like buying a truck by the hour, power by the hour, batteries leasing, uh, different systems to share. How do you see this transition at the same time, or will it be ahead of the actual technology being introduced in the market?
Well, that's a great point, Jim. And I feel like it would be a fantastic world if we could just have a shared asset environment so people could sort of test and learn from the different technologies that are out there and then choose the one that is best for their application. But what that means is someone has to make the investment, someone has to take the risk on the technology being good at large scale. And so there will be some of that in I think in different geographies around the country, but I don't see it on an enormous scale. I think what you're more likely to see is a platform that enables that process where asset ownership resides with someone else. The platform is a technology that will help that become a reality. But I don't think that's even 50% of the market. It's probably maybe 10% of the market. And I think companies by and large want to own their equipment or lease it in the traditional way. Certainly, battery subscriptions are available today, and what lenders are focused on there is state of health. They're looking at the state of health of the battery so that they can peg, the cost. As we learn more, we may change the way that works. I don't know. And Steve Isaacson asks a very good question here, and it kind of feeds into what I was talking about. And that is, many clients have concerns about the long-term stay of electric vehicles as they had previously invested in CNG or E85 vehicles and all the supporting systems and training. So what is the guarantee that electric is the future and not hydrogen or something else that isn't really discussed in mainstream? And Shaun spoke to that just earlier. I don't know the answer to that question. I don't know if I could. I certainly wouldn't make a guarantee that EV was going to be it. But I think it'll be part of the equation, and it's going to be a function of application and utilization. And I do believe that BEV trucks will be here for the right applications and for the right OEMs, no doubt.
Shaun, that's interesting. do you see any hybrid or plug-in hybrid applications in your products?
Jim, really good question. And I think that, do I see that? Yes. Down the road, I see that as being a possibility. The challenge is it's going to be in which way the regulations kind of unfold. As you know, CARB has their own set of rules that many states are adopting that require, advanced clean truck requires zero emission, and a hybrid does not qualify for that. When you get to 2027, EPA has now lined out their greenhouse gas phase 3, which you're going to want to, which is also then going to focus on, overall your greenhouse gas emissions. So would the hybrid play a role in that? Yes, it would help us meet that equation to some degree. But when you look at CARB's ACT regulations, it's zero emission vehicles, and that doesn't help there. So it's kind of that thing that we were talking about. How do we build a model that gives us the most flexibility for our customer base, but also allows us to meet those regulatory standards that we have? So I know Akio Toyoda, he really was professing that he really felt, and to almost to his chagrin a little bit, and I think it caused some, maybe, some, I think, pushback, that they weren't trying to adapt to electrification as fast as many thought. I think he maybe was on the mark with some of this, but it's really going to depend on how the regulations lay out and does it provide a pathway for us. And back to, I think, your Kirk's response to Stephen, I'm not sure, there's really no guarantees. We kind of have an idea that we think in our lower class trucks, battery electric will be the longer term way we're going to go, because as technology improves in that, the way that we see the things now, that looks to be a great way to go. As we get to batteries that hold, that are denser in charge, you'll have those things. But when you get into like Class 8, it may be hydrogen fuel cell for longer haul things, because battery electric may just, from a weight perspective, we may never get there. So hard to answer that question, and no way we can make any guarantee. But when you ask about hybrid, that's one of those things that, could we see it fitting in down the road? Yes. But the way things are being written now, the only area we're going to get credit for it would be in greenhouse gas. And do you get more? You get more credit for zero emission vehicle. So the way that these modeling comes together and the cost, does it work? So those are all things that we're looking at, but probably longer term. And we're trying to wrap our arms around now what the EPA just came out with on Good Friday was GHG phase 3 in its final form, where they seem to provide a little bit more latitude to something like the hybrids. But the CARB regulation of ACT, Advanced Clean Trucks, which many states are adopting, it does not really does not give you credit for that. You have to have zero emission, at least the way that is written right now.
I think the most interesting thing that I see, as I don't know, I kind of call myself a spectator on this whole, propulsion and powertrain perspective of it is the interesting partnerships that are coming together, right? I mean, if you think about it, the question that Stephen has is, what's the guarantee? I think the guarantee is that there's going to be continuous change, right? There's going to be evolution, right? And now more than ever, the speed of change, and Shaun, you talked about solid state battery, and then, I know that, some companies, Toyota's got lots of interesting stuff on the hydrogen side, and there's all kinds of things that are out there that are coming together. But what's interesting is when you see the OEMs working together and the interesting partnerships, and then you got some connecting dots with companies like Cummins and, things like that. It's I think everyone's trying to figure out, okay, the guarantee is that there's going to be change, but as business entities, what we're trying to figure out is how do we mitigate the risk of adapting to those changes, but most importantly, how do we mitigate the risk of not being ready to move with one of those changes? Does that make sense? So that's the and I'm not saying cry tears for us. From an OEM perspective, the investment in these technologies is dramatic. It's huge, as you can well imagine. And we're not even talking about right now, like I mentioned, autonomy, which we have customers that are very interested in, not final mile autonomy, but right now, mid-mile autonomy. And we're working, those areas we're working on also, that we all believe with driver shortages and things, that you can move to probably a straight truck that would go between distribution centers, or, you have going between 2 or 3, where you can reduce the amount of complexity because it's not final mile, but like mid-mile autonomy is something that people are already starting to look at.
That's just add another layer on top of the propulsion technology that you're trying to meet customer demand, but also you're required to meet regulatory demands. So there's huge investments. So like you're saying, Mandar, and I mentioned earlier, having partnerships and alliances is really about the only way. And I'll speak for us, we're globally about a $30 billion company now, but we're aligned with Honda on some hydrogen fuel cell work in larger trucks in Japan. We're working with Toyota on a smaller hydrogen fuel cell truck in Japan also, that we're the N series size or L size in Japan.
Sure.
We're working on battery electric technologies. We're partnered with Cummins globally, in diesel technologies and also advanced technologies for the North American market. That's just some of them. So you look at the amount of, I would say, variety that we have to create now, and the amount of these ways of trying to bring that technology in. It's challenging for every OEM, so I know we're not alone. And again, we're working with General Motors on the gas engine. We're working with North American teams here. So I think everybody's kind of in the same boat. To try and forge a path on your own is just too expensive. And, the reason we're all having to do that is, as we said, the technology will probably evolve and change. So where we're at today is going to be different than we're probably at 10 years from now. Yeah. Sometimes it's impossible to see that. Sometimes you have a reasonably good path on it, but out in the fringe, there's going to be stuff that changes. So, yep. It is evolving fast, and at the rate technology is coming, it challenges us all. I think it's going to provide great solutions in the long term, but adapting to those and understanding how to use them is going to be, those who do that best are going to be the biggest winners. And that's not just OEMs. That's the people that are, that's the people that are using the trucks also, and sure. The dealers that are supporting them.
Yeah. Don, when will autonomy be available?
You know what, Jim, that's a great question. I would say that if you ask me, the crystal ball, you already see it like in agriculture in areas, that are confined, that you already see that. I think commercially, I would say as we get probably to the end of this decade, I'm betting that you may see some mid-mile autonomy by the time we get towards the end of this decade. Some people may say I'm crazy, but from what I'm seeing, I recently was up in San Francisco and rode in one of the Waymo taxis. Unbelievable, that it can drive around and it drives like a human. So you can see some of the advancements that have been made with that. And if you look at mid-mile autonomy, it's still challenging, but it's far easier to get to that than this infinite number of places that you would have to go with, like a taxi like that. So I think that there is a marketplace for that. And I think that, I don't think you're going to see it. Final mile to me is a challenge, and I'm not sure I would be willing to predict that one. But I think maybe by the end of the decade, you would see something that we would be involved in some form of mid-mile autonomy. Yes.
So we all have to get ready for these technologies. They're going to happen. You said it really well, that we're on the very beginning edges of the development of the technology. It's going to advance quite a bit, and we're collaborating. So from each of your perspectives, how do we now find new ways of managing the customer? We're entering a new area with the customers, that we're no longer selling a vehicle,
right,
and fixing it when it breaks, but now we're becoming responsible for all of their transportation needs in their business.
Can I start on that one?
What are you doing? Yes, and please do.
Okay, because we've been working on, and then I think this will fit well, because then it'll pass probably to Mandar and then Kirk, because kind of in the chain. From our perspective, we're looking at it that we have to align more with our partners like Mandar and Kirk, because it is, and the dealers, without a doubt. We are looking at it that I believe that it's going to become, in some cases, and don't anybody in this get mad at me, less about the hardware, because there'll be more commonization because of the fact we're all investing in these advanced technologies that we can't afford. It's going to become more about customer experience. And how do we team together from a standpoint of us working with our dealers, with our customers, with the body companies and the finance companies, to make sure that you supply a customer experience that is seamless with all this stuff that they don't want to have to worry about. They just want to know how to deliver the food that they're delivering, or go do the work on the landscape that they're going to do. They don't want to have to be troubled with a lot of that. And now there's going to be what I believe to be longer term, and I've been talking to our team about this probably for the last 8 to 10 years. It will become less and less about the hardware. It will become more about what I call the software or the customer experience. So we've got to work with our dealers, work with the customers, work with the body companies, work with the finance companies to ensure that there's a smooth flow to make whatever the ownership experience is that that customer is looking for. And each of them may be very different. A person that delivers food is going to be different than a landscaper. How do we make sure that we give them the best experience possible and don't over intimidate them with technology that maybe a lot of them don't understand? So I believe it's all going to be about customer experience, and the way that we partner with our dealers and the others involved in that transaction is going to be paramount to succeeding as a brand overall. That's the way I see it.
Shaun, are you deploying connected car technology, connected truck technology?
We are looking at that with the electric vehicle, Jim, and we're also investing in programs that help us get more involved with an understanding of the service at the dealership, where we're tapping into the dealer systems to help them. If there's a technical issue, it's automated. We can help them. A red flag is raised if a vehicle is in there for too many days of downtime, because downtime is critical in our industry. So yes, the connected vehicle is going to help with that, but we're also doing things that we're connected to the dealer at a more I call intimate level, that we can be more engaged in the service experience, because we think that will become more and more important down the road as minimizing downtime and ensuring that customer experience. So connected vehicle and connecting more deeply with the dealer on things that used to be a black hole for us. Now we can work collectively with them to ensure a better customer experience. Both.
Yeah, I think
So
the paradigm.
How do you translate?
How do I translate what Shaun's? I think the paradigm shift is really the business, how the business flows through the channels appropriately, right? I mean, like Shaun's right. I mean, the hardware part of it, like when I say hardware, I mean the metal part of it is okay. We're building it, we're putting it together, and here we go, right? But it's getting the channels to just trust the process through and understand, okay, it's okay to be looking at it holistically rather than just my little individual, box. That's a really tough deal. I mean, it's easier said than done, and a lot of the OEMs are trying to make a shift from it's not just the vehicle, it's the whole, suite of services and the whole suite of information, and I think that is the next realm. That's going to be the next realm. The question's like, how are the business relationships and the trust relationships through that transition are really, really embedded, both culturally and structurally in how the commercial work truck industry works, right? So,
yes,
it's gonna be tough. It's gonna be a bear, but I think that's probably the next biggest challenge as we look forward is okay, yeah, I got a distributor and say, I get like tongue tied. I got a distributor in Salt Lake City that sells Knapheide bodies to this dealer. And does that dealer really understand, okay, now I'm the point of reference to that customer and I'm selling the entire suite of services versus just body and truck, right? It's a big deal. It's a different sell. It's a different package on how that all pulls together. And it's a different approach to the end customer and the users of our products to get them to understand, okay, here's the potential of the stuff we can put together.
Do the same dealers fix your lift gate that sell the truck, or do they go to a different location to service that?
Well, that's a good point, right? I mean, when we talk about the experience and the service, and Shaun knows where this is mobile service. As simple as that is, right? To say, we offer mobile service, right? Well, what are they servicing? Are they servicing the truck? Are they servicing the diagnostics and the electronics and the communication equipment? Are they servicing the upfit that's on the truck? Are they servicing the sub-component that's part of the upfit that's on that truck? There's a lot of different levels there, so it's an interesting perspective. A lot of times, if something goes wrong with the truck, like let's just say something, a product, a feature of our body needs repair or is warranted or something like that. Typically they got to find an Knapheide distributor, and we're going to work it that way. But maybe we need to rethink what that is. Not maybe, we're going to have to over time rethink how that all works and where does that all come together. So again, it's going to be an interesting change on how this all comes together in servicing the customer in the context of the entire package, right? I mean, I'm still, my personal belief is that the the foundation of the whole thing is the truck, or is the hardware package, right? But we've all got to open up our eyes to say, okay, what's the total solution set as it evolves going forward, and go from there, right? Again, it's not, I have this sitting here, and I hope there's nobody from Apple on the phone, right? But on the call, but it's not the device, right? It's the suite of services that this device offers to me, right? To make my life easier, that make me get there. And that's going to be the challenge when we talk about transportation going forward, is what's that suite of services that the device offers to the individual to make their job, life, everything easier to complete. On the flip side of that, and I don't think we can't lose this sight of this, is that all these services that are being offered, all the information has reverse value to people like me, to Shaun, to Kirk, right? It's like, to be able to understand those consumer behaviors and what they're doing, where are they going, how are they using it, when's it running, when's it not? I mean, all these things may be simplistic of what I'm saying.
Data.
There's a lot of deeper insights that can be gleaned there, right? And again, I hold up my favorite device. There's a lot happening here, right?
The key to that.
I don't know if my wife realizes
data.
Getting national attention here on the screen. But the reality of it is that information is important.
You mentioned and Shaun made the same point. You could say that the truck is more ubiquitous, but the upfit is one step closer to being a tool for the customer's use.
Yeah, absolutely.
And the upfit in it lasts longer than the chassis, doesn't it? In some cases.
Some cases, depending upon the use cycles and what's being done with it, right? But again, it's like how do we embed ourselves with the dealers and make sure that we're driving the discovery of what needs to be done and how it needs to be done. More and more we want bespoke solutions for our work, right? It's easy to say, oh, I'm going to, I mean, Shaun knows this. I'm going to a dealership. I'm walking in a dealership. I need a box truck. Okay, well, there's 10 of them sitting here. Take one, and there away you go. But now the next question is, well, I need a box truck, and it's got to do this, and it's got to do that, and it's got to do this. It's got to transmit this. I need that. I need this. There's a lot more specificity coming into what the need of the vehicle is, and then at what point do we start fostering and feeding that going forward is a change in how the channel does business, right? So it's a very, very interesting interesting perspective on how things is. One thing I tell our customers is the big change that's happening is you got to think ahead, right? I very simply say to some of our distributors that the two times people buy a work truck is either A, their current work truck has died, literally died, right? And then they're in a panic to walk in and say, I need this. I gotta build this house and I can't get there. Okay, well then this is what you got. Go, right? That's one aspect. The other aspect is they just got awarded a massive contract for something and they need 8 of them or 10 of them, right? And then they walk in, I need 10 of them. When do you need them? I need them yesterday. Okay, well, here's what I got. Okay, go. Well, now the think ahead part of that is like, okay, start thinking ahead. What is the next challenge you got to face, or what is the replacement cycle you're looking at?
Go forward.
We got to think. We got to get our customers and our dealers to think ahead.
Kirk, on this translating from the old way of doing business to serving customers' needs, and everyone's spoken well from their perspective. The financial piece of it is the glue that's in the middle that puts it all together. So how do you see this transition to serving customers as opposed to selling a product?
Yeah, and that's always been a big key for us. Is we know as a finance company, to the extent that we can value up with an end user customer, the operator of that equipment, we are valuing up with our dealer and we are valuing up with our OEMs. And so, look, a perfect world would be where we could deliver a business in a box to the operator of that equipment. And what I mean by that is, you've got the battery piece, put a subscription in place, give them the state of health, help them understand, how long they have with that battery, how efficient that battery is, provide them with route optimization capabilities, and fund the acquisition of that soft value into the overall equipment transaction, telematics, and then predictive and prescriptive analytics. What's going on with the truck? What's going on with the body? If you have a refrigerated body, you might need cold chain management inside of your business and the operation of that vehicle and running the routes that you run to deliver produce to a local grocer. So there's a lot that goes into it. And the way I see it, Jim, is it will be iterative because all of those things require partnerships. We certainly can't do it. We're a lender, but we do want to get to a place where we're able to offer all of those kinds of services into the environment for that end user customer, because we know if we're doing it for the end user customer, we have already valued up with our dealer customer, and we've already valued up with our OEM partners.
Well, that's really well said, because you're the glue that holds. It's kind of, you're the gravity that keep the planets from flying away and circling the right orbit. Christina, I or someone else, I saw a couple questions come across. I can't see them. Did you all see these questions, or can we?
We pretty much addressed it.
Address them?
Yeah, the one, Jim, was about the guarantee that electric, if the guarantee of electric is the future. We talked about that one, but yeah, I think what's interesting, Kurt, just to expand on a little bit what Kurt said, the information of what's, like, for example, the refrigerated truck is a classic example, right? Like, how are you monitoring the condition of that box in the back to make sure that the goods are delivered appropriately? Inventories, last mile delivery, packages coming in and out, like what's leaving, what's coming in, how are we keeping a live inventory on the vehicle? Those all are interesting concepts. Usage, preventative maintenance things are things that we're starting to see, like, okay, you got a compressor welder on a crane truck. Okay, well, how long are we using it? Is it ready for a PM? What's going on? What's the diagnostics? Is the diagnostics being sent to the cloud, and is the cloud signaling this? And there's so many things that are going to evolve and come together that it's going to be interesting. And the big challenge, I think one of the big things, is the volume of information, the volume of data that's going to be transmitted from vehicles up and down.
Right.
That data, the volume of it, and just what it's going to take to handle that is going to be it's going to be amazingly, it's going to be transformational, I think.
And Mandar, to that point, I think some people aren't going to like it. I mean, because you know what the issue is, that there's a lot of times where people bring their vehicles in and they say one thing, and now you can pull information out and say, I don't think that's how you treated it. So one of the things is
exactly right.
It's going to be, we're going to know more and more about it. And as Kirk was mentioning, I think that the state of health on batteries, it's no longer going to be just purely mileage on an engine, an internal combustion or an ICE engine. You're going to be able to see how people have either taken care of or abused the battery pack on the vehicle. So yeah, there's going to be some things that people aren't going to like about this, and there's going to be growing pains with what we're able to see, and the amount of information that's going to be able to be collected from not only the chassis standpoint, but also from the body standpoint, just the overall operation of the vehicle. We're going to be much more educated on how people are caring for the vehicle, and but also you're going to be able to help them from an efficiency standpoint. There's a great side to it, and I think there's a lot of things that are going to be positives about it, but I also think there's going to be some people are going to maybe be freaked out a little bit by the time they understand how much you can pull out of there.
Jim, one of the things we started the discussion was I think one of the points we started on was downsizing, right? Think about it. If you know what that vehicle is being used for, its routes, its cycles, the payload that's being put in it, because you can figure that out too, right? And then when that vehicle is coming up for renewal and they come into the dealer and the dealer can say, okay, here's how you used your last one. Okay. Why do you need that class? You don't need a class 6 all-wheel drive crazy truck. Maybe you need something less and the overall value for you is better, right? Okay. Maybe that's what we do, right? Maybe that dealer now is saying, okay, we're going to take you from this down to here. His net sale, his dollar revenue might come down a little bit, right? But efficiently and maybe financially and everything, that might be a more optimal solution for the end customer. It might be a more optimal solution for the vehicle that's being sold. It might be a more optimal solution financially for Kurt's paper, right? So again, now we got to rethink. Okay, that sales guy that's making an optimal sale, what's his carrot on a stick? How are we gonna do that? It's a big dilemma that's gonna be a very interesting puzzle that maybe my kids will figure it out. That's their job at the end of the day. But we're right, Shaun, Kirk, we're just teeing it up for the next group.
You're building a relationship.
I got to tell you, Mandar, I love my kids, but if it's up to them to solve these problems, we're in trouble.
We got plenty.
So real quickly, Shaun, just for the audience and for us to know, how do you see this year versus last year? Each of you in your business, how do you assess the outlook for this year in terms of the profit as well as revenue and volume?
You know what, Jim? Again, great question. I think that we see this year, we had an all-time record of what I would call wholesale, or the amount of product that we were able to produce last year and put into the system. And not Mandar's fault, but I think the body companies are now kind of the pinch point. They're trying to, as the OEMs kind of got their acts together, the chip shortages were gone, we were able to start producing at higher levels. I think that what we're probably seeing the market return to a little bit more of a normal pace. I think there's still some pent-up demand and some vehicles out there that we've got to work through, but we're not seeing it where it was as crazy as it was. I still think the medium-duty market is strong. I think it's going to continue to be strong. I think we're in a really good spot. I also think that you're going to have some form as we move in on 27, a little bit of a pre-buy, particularly when you look at class 6 and 7. So we think that the marketplace is going to continue to roll quite well. While I don't want everybody to think that there was a point where nobody cared. They just wanted a new truck. Now they want the truck that they need, and people are being a little bit more specific. And I think that we are seeing a little bit of what I would say more of a normal level kind of return. But market's still good, and we're expecting retail. We expect the amount of product that's sold by our dealers will probably exceed last year. I don't think that we'll, that we're going to produce quite as many as we did, because our dealer stock is quite high, because I think there's a lot of stuff still staged and needs to get out, because our truck really doesn't finalize the sale. Like you said, it's a little bit of vanilla, and a scoop of chocolate, until Mandar and the other body companies put the specific requirements of what that customer has for the body on it. Then it's a retail sale. So it's a little bit different than the, like the light duty vehicle market, but I still think it looks pretty good. I think 24 looks good. And I think as we look at 25, 26, and, moving into that, we see it being strong.
Yeah. Shaun's spot on.
Mandar?
Shaun is spot on with his assessment. And I don't take that, what you said about, the upfitters, I don't take that at all, personally or even professionally. It's right. I mean, right now the bottleneck is in taking chassis and making them into something for the end user. And, we're trying to figure out what that means in terms of capacities and investments and stuff like that. But overall, we view 2024 to be a very good year. Maybe a little bit soft. We talked about it on the prep call. We talked a little bit about, the local guy, local plumber that's walking into a dealership to buy a new vehicle, right? He's looking at 20 to 25% more on the capital cost. And he's looking at potentially double digit costs on the paper to finance it, right? So you're seeing a little bit of pullback in that arena, but on the institutional side, construction companies, big infrastructure, utilities, all that stuff is pretty strong. So we're pretty hopeful that the year is going to end up pretty well for us.
Great, thank you, Mandar. Christina's got beads of sweat there. We're getting close to.
What about Kirk? You got any free money over there, Kirk? You handing out free money to the world?
Yeah, so Kirk,
Come on by, Mandar.
With the interest rates, how does it look? You close us out, Kirk.
So yeah, I think, with inflation, doing what it's doing right now, and the Fed signaling now probably no decreases this year. I think interest rates are going to stay where they are, but I do believe it's a new normal and not disastrous. But it does mean that we have to tighten our belts a little bit in every way.
Well said. Well, I appreciate it. We could go on. The three of you have so much knowledge to share and have wisdom that this could be, gosh, we could spend all day doing this. I can't thank you enough for joining us in the audience. Catherine, Work Truck Solutions, and Aaron, we appreciate this forum. We learn from asking each other's questions, and also we hope the audience has benefited. It's been a great honor to be here. Tomorrow we're going to do the application of the dots, of how we actually deliver the dots. And so that will be a session that starts again at 9:15. We thank you very much for the attention, and we look forward to seeing you at the next summit, which isn't too far away.
Take
Thank
care,
you.
guys.
Thank you.
Everybody.